the Within Orb podcast. Come get Within Orb. Welcome to another episode of Within Orb, and today we're going to slip into the Bath, UK, England, going to Bath, England, to speak with Nicola Smuts Allsop. Nicola, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
It is an honor to have you. I love working with you. I love your astrology brain, and I cannot wait to talk to you about your favorite astrology books. So, what was your first astrology book?
So, when we started studying astrology, which was quite a long time ago now, we obviously learned with Robert Suskin in South Africa. And he had a rule for beginner astrologers in his class. And that rule was you're not allowed to read any books. And he was hoping to maybe get you more established in some kind of system first before you flung yourself at. And he didn't want multiple questions and heckling from the back row of people who'd read this and what about that and what about this. So yeah, it was very good advice. But along the way, I heard him refer to this book called The Moment of Astrology by Geoffrey Cornelius. And no doubt Rod might have felt confident in talking about it, knowing that it was out of print at the time. But what he didn't count on is that I managed to find a hard copy from a friend of mine, and we managed to photocopy it a couple of times for everyone in the class. And illegal, completely, disrespectful, whatever. But we were so desperate to get our hands on something. And that was what I read. And then later with that same friend, we actually went to a conference in England and met Geoffrey. And he said to me something about, I don't suppose you've read my book. And I said, better still, I photocopied it a couple of times. And of course, he loved that. He loved the fact that even though it was out of print, it was still kind of doing the rounds. So yeah, that was the first book. And it was, I must say, a very heavy book to read. I didn't read it all at once. I probably didn't understand a lot of what I was reading at the first time. And that's why I think it's one of the three books I'd probably also take, in your questionnaire. What books would you take to the desert island story? Because it is a classic. And with Geoffrey, it's so deep and it's on so many levels that you need to read it about 20 times in your life. And sometimes it's just a case of like the I Ching. You just read it and open it on a page and it just gives you something that you needed on that day. So, but yeah, his critique and his commentary on the pitfalls and the problems about, trying to fit astrology into a scientific paradigm has been extremely useful for me. And I've worked now for a very long time as an astrologer, and we all know about wrong charts and we all know about right predictions of weird circumstances and various miracle predictions that I myself have made that there is seemingly no good reason for it. Yes, I can find the astrology. We can talk about it, and we can not bend the astrology. I often don't have to bend the astrology, but it was like, how did you see that? What was that process of astrology that you used? I've always struggled a bit with my double Pisces aspect, and I've always wanted to be my 10th house Capricorn expert at something, and rather wanted to depend on that rather than having just an intuitive take on something. And I'm not kind of dismissing an intuitive take. I just wanted the Capricorn to work a little harder, I suppose. So when I had predictions that were quite weird and wonderful, Geoffrey's work kind of allowed me just to lean into it and to kind of appreciate that we don't know everything. And it's definitely, for me at least, and through the reading of Geoffrey's work, it's definitely not just scientific. And that for me is a very, I guess it's that meaningful space where anything can happen, even in your own astrology. And it's a source of connecting me with something that's bigger than me. So when I read his work again, I never get bored of it. I never get bored of hearing the story of it.
Mm-hmm. What a way to begin. And I can see him hearing you tell him that he's become contraband. It's like the Capricorn, because he's got triple Capricorn, right? He's probably going, oh, now I've made it. I'm a contraband. This is good. I'm on the underground. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm envious now because I wish I had had that as a first book. It is such a before and after text. Your life changes when you read it.
Well, as you will know, because of my dissertation and the things that I have published before, I quote him at length in my dissertation, because when you're studying something like, as I call it, it's like the humanism or medical anthropologies, you can't come at it with astrology as a science, and doctors don't let you near patients with astrology as a science. So it's a good text that gave me confidence to deal with the harsh science world out there and to come at them with something different. I wasn't trying to be like them, and I wasn't trying to be better than them in their field. I was just coming along saying, this is a medical anthropology. I want to do qualitative work. This is not a science, and I'm going to use your paradigms. And so it gave me, I suppose, a confidence with that.
Mm-hmm. Let's back up a little bit, because I don't think many people actually do know about your dissertation. You studied with Geoffrey.
Yes.
And your thesis is about astrology, which I love. I love collecting people who've written big, major academic works about astrology. But give me like the tweet version of your thesis.
So I wanted a way in which I could be properly and academically appreciated by my IVF specialists and the medical fraternity. And I needed access to patients, and I needed respect, and I needed them to take referrals from me and to respect it when my patients asked to have their treatments at certain times. So in order to do that, I built a fairly long-standing relationship with the IVF world here by coming in and saying, I'm not a science, but if you want to consider me in any way, shape, or form, you can consider me as the most sophisticated placebo you've ever seen.
But you've gotten some pushback about the placebo word, haven't you?
Some astrologers who haven't done the academic reading of the definitions of placebo do push back, because astrologers or people in general have a very kind of shallow understanding that placebo means sugar pill or gimmick, and that it's just, it's just a placebo. So I'm used to the just a placebo kind of argument. But what I found really interesting, and what my thesis mainly dwells on, is the work done by David Jopling, who did a meta-analysis on placebo. And he's a medical doctor with obviously a couple of PhDs, and he set out the definitions of the placebo effect and what constitutes a placebo effect, what isn't a placebo effect. And then he also said, these are the medical and ethical parameters with which you could use a placebo effect. And one of the things that he kind of said, which really resonated strongly with me, is he quoted Daniel Moorman, a Dutch academic, who said that the placebo effect should be redefined as a meaning response. So anybody who's an astrologer knows that when you're in a consultation and you're talking about somebody's chart, and you're talking in the strange language of astrology that is sometimes a metaphor, not necessarily just language, you create a resonance, you create something that they go, oh, yeah, I feel that to be me, or I feel that to be my story. So Daniel Moorman was saying we have a meaning response, and then we adjust our bodies according to that meaning response. Jopling described it as the trigger for self-repair, which I found wonderful. And Jopling also said that false insights cure. And he also said that it's quite okay to go to a pseudoscience or even an astrologer, so long as, and he had these three little medical criteria, so long as you told the person you were using astrology, that you knew astrology wasn't a science, and that you were vaguely expert in your field. Those were the three things. He said, if you say that, then you have fulfilled the medical ethical requirement, and then it's sort of up to the person to take what you say because you've declared yourself. So I found that interesting and reassuring. And his data on false insights healing, I found, was particularly striking, because so often, I mean, there have been other astrologers such as James Brockbank. In his PhD, he talks about taking the position of as if. So it's kind of like you have to suspend your belief system and you have to suspend your reality. And if you do that, you kind of enter a space outside of yourself, an imaginal cosmos, it's sometimes been called, or the space in which you can explore various narratives. I call them narratives, and I call them narratives of self-identity. And so you can explore them, you can see what resonates, and you can take up with the story and let that story be a trigger for self-repair. So I think if astrologers kind of did all that reading, they might appreciate that there's many more definitions of placebo than just gimmick or sugar pill.
That's super compelling, and there's a through line here. I'm noticing that, you're talking about false data healing or false insights healing, and then there's Geoffrey Cornelius from your very first book, like false charts working so well, working so accurately. But what does false mean in that context? So shifting it into meaning response, or we do drive valid data out of something that's technically wrong. It's trying to like explore what does that mean wrong.
Yeah. So what happened to me as an astrologer, just as like a seminal moment, is literally, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm a fertility astrologer, and I actually said that. What really struck me was one of the first fertility charts I ever did was the Amanda chart, and it's well documented in my book. And her story was so weird and so like out of nowhere. It was a miracle chart, and I think what shocked me was how I got there. And I realized I'm going to study now for the rest of my life to find out exactly what it was that I saw. Like, how could I have made that judgment? There must be something really meaningful about this astrology stuff, and I need to know like all of it. So I'm going to study really hard, and maybe I'll understand. And the truth of the matter is, no, I studied a lot, and I still don't understand. But I look at that chart and I go, wow, that was amazing. And so I think that we're all given like something that keeps our focus and attention. And kind of for her, it was this baby. And for me, it was, this is the carrot that's going to keep you, sort of on the straight and narrow with astrology. And it certainly got me into medieval astrology. It got me into so many different techniques. There was a stage where I was trying a lot of things to justify and support some of the findings in my work. And I have to confess, I am old enough that I have forgotten a lot of those techniques already. So it's it's shameful actually how much we do forget. And I have narrowed my own techniques down to like such a narrow set of tools in my handbag that it's like literally it's a handbag. So I'm still allowing a lot of breathing space for miracles and not hunting down this perfect system, because all along from Geoffrey's first work, I've understood that the system isn't perfect, but you should try anyway. That's kind of my position.
We're like in very opposite spaces, because I feel like I pick up a new book every day and my astrology breaks over and over and over again. But I know what you're talking about in terms of when you develop like a gymnastics routine. You take a chart and you run through the circuit and you get what you need, and then you can have the results that you're looking for. But if you don't do that specific performance, then you're going to get a different experience and a different result. And not saying that the data would change enough for you to like recommend different dates, but it's not what they're there for. You're not going to be doing a psychological situation with them, and you're looking for very specific things. And so this is the rubric that gets you there. And when I'm reading, I'm kind of just like, what did they do in the 1980s? And what were they doing in, 1780s,
It's very interesting. I used to, and it's a sadness. So now I have an iPad now with a pen that I at least make handwritten notes, because I used to have moleskin notebooks. I still have them here that go back like a whole decade. And when I'd get a client, I'd make notes in the back and I'd write out all of their midpoints. I'd literally, for a period of a year, I'd write out in detail all of their midpoints and other little various things. And that process of sitting down, and that was my way in. So I had my list of my notes. Okay, what's your mutant of pregnancy? What's your perfection? What's the solar arcs that I must pay attention to? Boom, what are the transits? Okay, now we're going to do the midpoints. Then I'd be scribbling this out. And I think when I was studying the work of Ian McGilchrist, who wrote the book, The Master and His Emissary, and he talks about the two different hemispheres of the brain, I was obviously entertaining my left hand brain so that the right could actually go off and find the stuff that it needed to find. So we do need to kind of like honor that part of us, and it is ritual. So when you're talking about that gymnastic movement, it's that. I have to stick to that little piece of ritual because it gets me in a stance, it gets my head in a space, and it allows me to prepare for something to come through. Then you do that, and then in the scribbling of the notes, the symbol maybe speaks louder, or the symbol has pathway. So for me, at least, that's my experience of my astrology. I think that's what I do. And I miss not having the moleskins, but the iPad's not a bad thing.
All right. Well, now I'm going to stick you on a remote island somewhere. And you'll have an ephemeris, as I give to all the guests, but you can only take 3 books with you. So what are your books?
Yeah, that question was quite hard and then surprising to me. I have to say. So I have to say the first one that I did go, okay, I have to have that is Guido Bonatti, Ben Dykes' translation, The Liber Astronomi. And for me, it's like there's so much in there. And most other astrologers like Lily and, they've all quoted Bonatti. So why not just take Bonatti? Might as well. And also, like I was saying before, there's so much astrology that I've already forgotten that it would be so interesting. And so I don't want to say nostalgic, but I do want to go, yeah, I might find myself again. I might go, oh yeah, I remember that. And so it's like an old friend, I suppose. And it's thumbed and it's got bookmarks. And yeah, I think I'd take that.
Yeah, I that's 2 volumes. It's a very nice book to have with you as well because it's leather bound, 2 volumes, quite thick. It's substantial, as you can feel it. It's good, heavy medieval astrology.
There'd be no excuse that I don't have the time to read it.
Yeah.
All other lazy excuses that I had before, none of that.
There you go. Yeah, and inside of that, there's the beautiful section in the first volume, I believe, on triplicity rulers of the houses, where we meet the ghost of Al-Andar Zagar.
Yeah, so Bonatti gave me a lot, I have to say, in my own astrology. And I did try an awful lot of medieval techniques. I really tried a lot. So I do love Omarr, but his book is so tiny, I wouldn't take it. So his book of nativities is like 12 pages long, not bothering with that.
Pamphlet of nativities.
Omar's astrology, or Omar's high leg, his calculation for the high leg, he prioritizes the part of fortune. So I find this comparison between Omarr and Bonatti, who sometimes kind of there's a bit of transference, from around that particular time. Omarr prioritizes the part of fortune in the high leg, which demonstrates a certain random luck, whereas Bonatti favors the ascendant. And that's the only difference between them, because they're very similar on everything else. But Bonatti favors the ascendant, which shows me that he's a child of the 1200s, where there was the plague, where your environment affected your fate. So he's saying you've got to have like a good environment, and Omar's saying you've got to have fate. You've got to have good luck, good fortune. I did notice that when I was reading it, but I did favor the Bonatti because I do think that is a really interesting viewpoint. And Bonatti takes it further. I mean, when he does the Almutans of profession, or when he does the rank of fame, Almutan, he's clearly demonstrating that a beggar can never be a king. So he's saying context is everything. And I love that idea that you can't predict something out of context. So it's always interesting to me as a shortcut in my astrology is to understand from my client, what are your limitations? Do you have money for IVF? Because if you have no money for IVF and no access to medical treatment, that limits my prediction quite a lot. Again, it's like valuable lessons learned. And that's a good way to kind of approach a chart for me.
Well, and it's also showing, that's 1200 is 800 years ago. And they're still saying it's not only the chart. It's not just the astrology itself. It's the life world, and the chart helps us navigate the life world. But you have to also look at the specific life world. So the expectation that one is going to run to the astrologer and treat them as if they're a psychic is completely strange. Why would you do that? It's not like that. It's like we have to have a conversation first, get the context, and then we can read the chart.
A slight confusing thing in the Middle Ages is also this thing about, it was like a kind of a high point for astrology, but it was kind of like, not the reason for being a high point, but like one of the reasons why it was allowed to be a high point was people like Ficino were using astrology to align yourself with God's will. So it became sort of part of like a church function, or there was some kind of church or spiritual aspect to it that they were trying to push for. And I think that they wanted that in order to be able to still practice astrology. There were other more interesting people like Agrippa who did other weird and wonderful stuff. But the nice thing about Bonatti is that where sometimes Ficino's astrology is overlaid with this whole Christian nonsense, I think Bonatti is quite clean and just context-based.
Imagine stepping into a room of 5,000 astrology books, turning a corner and stepping into a room of 2,000 more. The Celestial Arts Education Library is every astrologer's dream, and it can be yours. I invite you to come support CAELi before you can visit physically. Your support will mean the creation of 52 new episodes of Within Orb next year, 4 issues of the CAELi Review, our inaugural journal, and countless book talks, events, classes for our community. Visit our website, www.caeli.institute/support, to select your level of care. Please help support CAELi into the future, our future, so that we may study the future together. Thank you for listening. Please enjoy the rest of the show. So what would your second book be?
Well, I'm so predictable. I'm sorry. And my boredom threshold is dodgy. So I did go with The Liber Hermetis, the Robert Zoller translation.
The unobtainable Robert Zoller translation.
Exactly. Only because if you have a chart in front of you, or if you know a chart with certain degrees, he's got these weird and wonderful interpretations for these degrees. So you can, just like a Venus at 12 degrees of Aquarius, this native will offer food. It's so random, but it's so accurate, and it's a delight.
How do you think he got there?
I have no idea, but I've run those funny vagary degrees, especially when I'm in front of a chart that either I know so well that I now need like another way in, or a chart that I don't know at all, but I'm worried that what I know of the person, I'm going to be editing myself, and I just want, let's just see what this one, then I go to the Liber Hermetis, and something like that will make you think of that person and contextualize it in a way that you can put it in 2025 and it doesn't sound weird. And it's always a surprise, and there doesn't seem to be too much of a logic to it. So I can't figure out the system, so that also entertains my brain. So yeah, no, I do. The Liber Hermetis is a good one. Was I allowed another book?
Yeah, you have one more.
Okay. Then I hit a bit of a snag. So then I decided I would probably, if I was allowed to, I'd take the Moment of Astrology again, because, who knows? I mean, I might be there for another 10 years. I might need to read it again. But also I was thinking about Garry Phillipson's The Year Zero, because I'm so interested in how astrologers think about astrology and how they use astrology, because there's no one way. And for me, it's a self-reflection. It's about saying, never mind what people say astrology is. Let's see how they practice it, and that'll tell us actually what they think about it. Because we all have an idea of how we practice, but actually how we practice tells us more somehow.
You must have some kind of psychic sensibilities. I'm literally indexing the second edition of that book right now. Like, as we turn off the camera, I will go back to my console and continue the index. So it's coming out with Sophia Center Press by the end of this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So Astrology in the Year Zero. I would say, if I were you, I would bring the Moment of Astrology, though, because you'll get a lot more meat out of that one than Astrology in the Year Zero. If I get to edit your package, your luggage.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So, the Moment of Astrology, there's a lineage there related to Garry Phillipson's book, though, in terms of being able to take astrology and look at it philosophically from many different sides, all the facets of it.
You see, Gary's also from the school of Geoffrey, so he also has a strong leaning towards astrology as divination. I feel at home with the way in which he looks at astrology. He can be quite a cold critique. So he's quite, how can I say, he's got an incisor kind of way of looking at works and what people have done and appreciating it or not. And I like that. And I appreciate that. It's clean.
And he's not afraid to tango with the critics.
Yeah.
He definitely represents their viewpoint, and also is not afraid, even outside the context of the book, to stand up to them.
Yeah. So it's like, this was highlighted to me actually when I was lecturing somewhere. I can't remember. It might have even been on our course that we did before. But like I said, how we say we practice and how we actually practice sometimes are two different things. So I, at a stage in my life, was doing, I would say, very speedy readings at a holistic fair. It was one of the few things that I really loved. It was at a fair in Cape Town, where it was open to the public, and people came and sat down in front of you for 10 minutes and then they left. And for me, I just love people, and I just want to talk and engage to people. So for me, it was a really great way to do speedy readings. and you're on the spot and you got to come up with something to say. There's no thinking. There's no, you've just got to get into it. So those symbols have got to start working for you. So what I did was I actually shortcut some of my own advice. So while I love Omar Tiburis's A Mutant or Pregnancy, I figured out that I've actually just lopped off the last part of it because I didn't have the time to actually make a last calculation. So I just gave 5 planets 5 points as a generosity at the end. And I'm going, I know why I did that. And now that that's become part of my gymnastic routine, that's just not part of what I practice. But is it part of what I teach? No. And I suddenly realized that we have this disparity. Now, Garry and Geoffrey have no problem with that. That's not a problem to them. And I think we kind of need to just be more self-accepting and more kind of going, oh, so that's how we do it. Okay, well, that's okay. And it's worked. And so I don't see any reason to change it. I'm not freaked out about it anymore. And I don't think I ever was, but I don't think it bothers me as much as it bothers a lot of astrologers who want astrology to be a science. Then it bothers you. And it should if you want it to be a science.
You're not following the rules that Omar said. And you're like, no, I'm following the rules Nicola made. Because there is a living thing. It is alive and it responds differently. I mean, even you're noticing that between Omar and Benatti, the shift in the high leg from part of fortune to ascendant reflects a shift in society. And then the real circumstances of doing astrology at those times. And even in the early 20th century, the astrologers were saying, we love all of this ancient stuff. Does it still work? Let's find out. They weren't unaware of the tradition. They were poking it back and saying, what works now? What works now?
And also trying new things, So going back to the triplicity thing is like seeing something that's been done to something. So for instance, can't remember who it was who did it first, but Dorotheus of Sidon had a fondness for directing the Arabic parts. And he was directing them by triplicity. And I thought to myself, well, if you can direct a part by triplicity, surely you can direct the ascendant, and surely you can direct the mutant of pregnancy. And for me, it was a way of looking at solving a phenomena in the real world, and that is secondary infertility. And there's no reason why somebody at 25 can fall pregnant with no problem, and then suddenly at 29 or 30 cannot. And it's like, what happened? How do we describe that? So that phenomena led me to go, oh, well, maybe we've changed triplicity rulership here of the mutant. And like, let's see. So it first forced me to go Benatti and Sidon and look at the ascendant and see what life context has changed. So did your life context change? And then if the life context didn't change, I'd still be confused. And then I'd go, okay, but now let's direct the mutant of pregnancy and let's see if that changes. That brought up a whole lot of other problems in that you then have to determine what is your fertile phases, because obviously you're not fertile for 80 years of life.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind was like, you can't take it from 0 to 90. You have to shorten it in terms of the fertile lifespan and start with the first menses. But then what do you do also in bodies that don't menstruate as well? Because they also have mutants of pregnancy,
Exactly. So what I did was I took it from the age of 14. I'm just going puberty for everybody, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
Ish. So I took it from 14, and I think I took it to 27. And then I took 27 to 38, and then I took 38 to 45. I've had to adjust 45 only because technology has been so fantastic and has kept up that we now have egg donors who are frequently falling pregnant at 45 and even up to 50. And clinics used to not take anyone over 45, but they're now taking people up to 50. So I've actually kind of increased that a little, but it doesn't really matter if you increase it. It only really matters where you divide it. But when we're talking about fertility, you're talking about 2 different charts. So it's not just you. So and when you partner and marry with somebody else, sometimes there's a bit of less, kind of sloppiness. It's like the same kind of sloppiness with Fidaria. I've tried to use Fidaria, but Fidaria is so tricky because it's like the point at which you get pregnant, sometimes you don't even know for 3 months. And then you're going to give birth like 9 months later. So in which Fidaria are we talking about pregnancy and children? And it's not clear. So for me, I find it hard as a hard and fast thing with Fidaria. So it's like that with triplicity rulership. But as I said, context is everything, and this is life, and it's always messy, and it's
you've got to get in the moment. You just got to find that moment, that stochastic moment. Okay, so rounding it out, if someone like me, who actually did this, comes to you and says, I'd love to learn about astrology, what book would you tell them to read?
Well, firstly, if someone like you came to me, I'd throw a Bernadette straight at you.
Okay, well, you did that, but okay. But a beginner.
A beginner. So you know what I love to keep on my bookshelf? It's like my secret little vice. It's sometimes as astrologers, when we practice, we get tired, we get lazy, we get overwhelmed, and we get stuck in our own kind of symbolism and our own whatever. Every now and again, when I've got a chart and I'm going, oh gosh, I just don't know. Like I really don't know. And it's, especially if it's somebody I know really well. I love to go to this keywords in astrology, Hayo, Bansef, and Anna Hebler. You just open a page and it gives you like so much information, and it gives you just another insight. And it's just old fashioned enough to give you an insight that you hadn't thought of, but it's always quite true and it gives you another way to phrase what you want to say. And it's a great place to learn because it's all indexed. So it's like, you just open it on Venus in the 12th house. So when you're learning astrology and you've got your chart next to you, you're literally just opening it and you're having a little snapshot, which is, I think, what every beginner wants.
Amazing. That's a really awesome recommendation. So where can people find you?
So there's a website, fertilityastrology.com. I have a YouTube channel. If you just Google Fertility Astrology, or I think I'll put the link at the bottom with you. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicola.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Within Orb. If you loved this episode, share it with your friends, give it 5 stars, leave a comment. In Spotify, you can do that now. To learn more about the CAELi Institute and perhaps become a member or take a lab that we teach, please go to CAELi.institute. That's CAELi.institute. Thanks again to the E-Block Band for providing our intro and outro music, and also to Jen Brown of JJ Boots Productions for being an excellent producer. If you would like to have a podcast be edited like Within Orb, reach out to Jen. This is Jenn Zahrt, signing off for now. See you next week.